this is an important time to reflect on the anniversary of the start of the Korean War, 70 years ago, when we were brought together in a terrible way. But we've stayed together to help promote and create the strongest, most vibrant Korea ever in history. It's an unfinished job because we still have a divided Korea. And history still will give us the opportunity at some point to bring the Korean people together in peace.
On the 70th anniversary of the Korean War, we are to reflect on the origins of this relationship and how far it has come. In June 1950, when aggression came to the Korean Peninsula, the United States and South Korea formed an alliance between two people who knew nothing about each other in order to stem the tide of communism in East Asia.
But I think the first thing we need to remember at anniversaries is the suffering and the sacrifice, and our obligation to try to honor that sacrifice and make good all that was suffered. And I think it wasn't until I went to Korea myself as a young woman in 1975 and heard Koreans talk about what they called 6.25. Of course, I had to learn what that meant. It meant 625. They didn't even call it the Korean War. It was a date. It was a terrible date.
More than 2.5 million civilians perished. Some 54,000 American soldiers were sacrificed, and more than 3 million Koreans became refugees. The ceasefire treaty, solidifying the 38th parallel, remains to this day. The brutal fighting drove the two Koreas apart and left permanent injuries and scars.
Thereafter, the United States maintained tens of thousands of troops in South Korea and pledged to come to South Korea's defense in the event it was attacked again.
I think about, in this context, the memorial here in Washington, D.C. to the Korean War, and the words that are emblazoned on the memorial that says that, this is a memorial to remember the American people, the 1.5 million Americans who answered their country's call to defend a country they never knew and a people that they never met. 70 years from that point today, though, I think we should also look back and say that those words were true then, but they're no longer true now. We know Korea. We know Korea deeply. We know the Korean people. We have deep and extensive people-to-people ties based on a long, rich history of our alliance relationship that extends far beyond the defense aspects of the relationship.
The ROK-U.S. alliance, forged in blood through the Korean War, has evolved over time into an all-weather alliance with shared common values of promoting democracy and the free market economy. These shared values are what truly bind us together.
Another phrase I learned in Korean at that time was 혈맹관계. That's a blood-forged relationship. I learned that before I learned the Korean word for alliance. It's become something much broader, much deeper, much more organic as a relationship, and much more needed, I would say, now.
Remember that it was the Korean War that gave birth in the midst of crisis to the network of alliances in the Asia-Pacific region that have, on the whole, advanced prosperity, peace, stability, and democracy over the last 70 years.
Paving the way for deeper economic integration and political cooperation from climate change, non-proliferation, counterterrorism, health, humanitarian assistance, and more.
On the 70th anniversary of the outbreak of the Korean War, Korea-U.S. alliance reminds me of two things: resilience and concerns. Resilience has to do with the tremendous contribution the alliance has made, despite of all kinds of difficulties, in defending and protecting the interest of both allies, in military and economic realms in particular. Concerns have to do with what is at stake in justifying and continuing our alliance cooperation.
We need to have frank conversations about the future of the alliance.
I think the U.S. ROK alliance has been successful during the last 7 decades. However, we Koreans have one remaining aspiration, that is overcoming national division between the North and South and settling a permanent peace on the Korean Peninsula. So I eagerly wish the US and South Korea become close partners and achieve this goal through further development of alliance in the future.
As we look to the future of this alliance relationship, we have to remember that like all relationships, it goes through both good times and bad times. But the most important thing to remember is that the two governments and the two countries and the two peoples have to value the alliance not just for its great history, but also for the significant role it plays in the advancement of each country's interests going into the future.
70 years have passed since the outbreak of the Korean War. What remains unchanged is the ironclad alliance between Korea and the United States. We go together. 같이 갑시다.
We are committed to this alliance. It's an alliance that's based not just on a military presence, but it's an alliance that's based on our shared values, our shared democratic political systems, our shared economies.
There should be a sense of optimism because we've done great things together in the past. We're doing great things today, and we can do this as an alliance. A couple of other quick themes. The alliance is global now. It's not just about the Korean Peninsula, not just about Northeast Asia, but the world is watching what the United States and Korea do.
A changing world is presenting the alliance 70 years young with constant opportunities for cooperation and growth. The United States and Korea are time-tested teammates in one of the most successful partnerships the world has seen since the Second World War. Despite all of our remarkable achievements and successes, I am convinced that this alliance can and should be pushed to evolve into a partnership that is even more effective, even more adaptable. While the United States and Korea have been co-authoring new chapters of history every single year for 70 years, I firmly believe that the best days of the alliance lies ahead still.
I was born the same year as the Korean War, and my entire life has been focused on helping to bring prosperity and success and security to Korea. I've said many times in many locations that I believe that Korea is the key to peace and security in Asia. The Korea-U.S. alliance is the foundation of peace and security in Asia, and I'm committed as long as I can work and breathe to help bring about the ultimate unification of Korea under peaceful and constructive terms, and I hope that it just is the start of a whole new era of U.S.-Korean relations.
This year we have the privilege of commemorating the 70th anniversary of the start of the Korean War. I've thought long and hard about it and have spoken about it as a struggle that culminated in the victory of democracy over communism, and we see the fruits of that struggle in the present-day Republic of Korea. 7 decades later, I think that those men and women who served here during the Korean War will be amazed and proud of the alliance that we've forged and maintained together. And as we look to the future, I hope that what we do today to sustain and strengthen our alliance is worthy of the sacrifices that they made for us.